Tara is an artist and freelance graphic designer who's lived in Sackville, as Jemmy said, since around 1995. She graduated from the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design, where she concentrated her studies in fabric surface design and graphic design. She is a prolific, multidisciplinary artist who makes animations, sculptures, installations, drawings, and quilts. She served on the board at Strutson Fawcett Media Art Center for the last 10 years, a testament to her dedication to the Sackville art community. I got to know Tara initially through Struts, and ever since I have been a big admirer of her work ethic, her creative problem solving, her sense of humor, and her sense of materiality. She's blushing. I was tremendously pleased and honored that Tara asked me to have a conversation with her tonight about her work. While we talk, Tara is going to show images of her work and also a few animations, so we're going to use her work to guide our conversation. Tara also brought along some of her actual work right here, so if you want, you're welcome to come and look at it afterwards. And finally, Tara is going to be working while we talk, which leads me to my very first question, which is, what are you working on?
I am reclaiming wire, but actually making a little birdie right now.
And you're reclaiming wire from?
Champagne cork holder honor thingies.
What do you use that wire for?
Whatever you need wire for. Mostly for like stems and tree trunks for like flowers and flower trees and
Excellent.
stuff. But you know, whatever you need wire for.
Very good. And you take submissions of champagne toppers?
Yeah, if people don't want
if they don't want to recycle their wire themselves.
Yeah,
you can do that.
I'll take it off your hands.
You'll take it.
Yeah.
All right. And you have a lot of wire salvaged from this kind of process, right?
Yeah.
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 We're going to talk more about how recycling and salvaging materials work in Tara's work, which it plays a pretty significant role. We're going to talk about that later. First, I wanted to note that you clearly love making things and working with your hands, and I've always been impressed by how much you work and how dedicated you are to making things, and you never stop, not even now.
Well, except unless we're watching reality
Well,
TV.
I don't know, I seem to recall that you probably knit or something the entire time that we watched Paris Hilton. I don't think I did anything, but I'm sure you did. Even though you are constantly making work, you've told me that for many years you didn't consider yourself an artist. Can you explain why not?
Well, I had the notion that an artist had to have a BFA, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I went to a craft college, so I learned a trade, and well, you know, I didn't think that I qualified. And it was more like, you know, applying for grants, like officially, like when I stopped being a graphic, well, I'm still a graphic designer, but when I stopped working for
The
evil man, I wanted to develop an art practice, and I didn't think that I qualified, but John Murchie assured me that I didn't need a BFA to apply for a grant. So I became an artist. But yeah, when I was going to the craft college, I also had a funny notion that art was really hoity-toity, and like, you know, you needed a degree, and you needed to like use big $11 words if there's such a thing. And
Did you make fun of BFA students?
Well, I didn't know any BFA students, but I made fun of fine art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet here you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you changed your mind. We'll get to that later too. So you graduated from the New Brunswick
College of Craft
and Design,
which was called the Craft School when I started going.
But now it's called the College of Craft and Design. And you put your design skills to work as a graphic designer. You worked for a graphic design firm at first.
Ad agency.
Yeah, an ad agency. Can you talk about how you initially tried to use your training in fabric surface design and graphic design? Like you really did try, like once the work you were doing in school, you tried to kind of move or make a living from that.
Yeah,
initially.
I had learned how to do repeat patterns and stuff. So when I first moved to Sackville, I didn't have a job, although there were 2 ad agencies here, neither one was ready to hire me yet. So I had a friend who had moved to Toronto and had done fabric surface design at the same school as me, and she was making go of it selling designs to fabric companies. So she told me to do up some designs and send them to her. So I spent months doing all these designs that, well, some were very nice and some weren't. And she sold one, but it wasn't my favorite. This one's my favorite one that I did. But I ended up using it later in an animation. But yeah, so there's boxer shorts, I think, was what they were used on. So there's men in the world somewhere with my designs on their bums. But yeah, so I sold one design for like $135. It was not worth 3 months' work. Ooh. Yeah. So, but fortunately, I then got a job at one of the ad agencies. Yeah.
When you graduated, you did also maintain a daily drawing practice, right? That you said consisted of chalk pastels?
Well, I mean, I tried to keep a sketchbook. I tried to draw. My drawing teacher in college said you should draw for 15 minutes every day or you'll lose it. So I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I did. And then, in some evenings, I would do these pastel drawings on like nice paper and chalk pastels, and they were pretty mediocre, and I mostly just felt guilty about using really nice art supplies and not making anything nice with them. So I stopped doing that.
But then you discovered blind drawings.
Oh yeah.
And how did this change your thoughts on drawing and on materials? Because you're talking about you were feeling hung up on the fact that these were really nice materials, but you weren't making really good work out of it, so you felt like you were wasting your time and your money. So how did blind drawings change your perception about drawing and materials?
Well, for 2 reasons. Your eyes are closed, so whatever you come up with. Oh, I suppose, should we jump ahead to a slide? 2 more is a blind drawing.
These were more of Tara's early repeat patterns, right?
Sort of. Cut stamps.
Cut stamps.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's cool.
So blind drawings.
Blind
Go
drawings.
back to that story.
Your eyes are closed, so if it looks like crap, that's okay. You didn't see what you were drawing. And also I was doing them on like scraps of paper and stuff, so it was just like, didn't matter. It just didn't matter at all if it looked good, because it was just drawn on garbage, and if it did look good, then you have a really nice drawing.
So it freed you up.
Yeah, and this is a series I did of my dog, a gray schnauzer, and I colored them in with my eyes open. So that's what I started doing after I realized how much I liked doing blind drawings. I would then color them in afterwards so that everybody else could see what I saw.
You have some more blind drawings.
This is my other dog, a little white Mauser named Barney. I did a whole series of him I'm very fond of. And then I also started doing this online drawing club with my friend Leanne, where they would give you a theme every week to draw. And I was busy and I missed a few weeks, so I had like 3 or 4 themes to cram into one drawing. So I came up with this. I add the text after as well when I'm about to color it.
But
so
was that was the challenge?
That was like 3 or 4 challenges all glommed together. I think it had to do something with like space travel and music, and I don't remember what they were, but it was a few of the themes, like 3 weeks squished into one. And I had already been animating, so I had a little monkey character that I'd been working with. So after I did this drawing,
yes,
I made a little real version of it with a little carpet and diamonds and an iPod.
So that was the space monkey.
That's the space monkey, yeah.
The space monkey gets us into talking about your sculptures, and I want to the blind drawings. that signified this moment where you were freed up in how you thought about drawing and your relationship to materials, and that, you know, you could just do it. It didn't matter if it was bad or it was good. And around the same time, you, in 2004, right? This is about around that time, you had an influential experience with a typewriter.
Mm-hmm. I was...
Can you tell that story?
Well, you know, big garbage season.
Do you all know a big garbage season?
When everybody throws out cool stuff. I was driving around because my brother had just given me a station wagon, so I had all this room to put stuff in it. So yeah, I was driving around looking for stuff, and I saw this suitcase in the ditch, and it was an old typewriter that was broken. This is just some more of the little things. But so I found this old typewriter that was broken, and I figured I could fix it. And so I took it apart and kept taking it apart to the point where I could, you know, get at the bent thing that turned out to be like tempered steel, that there's no way I was going to bend it right. So I just kept taking it apart and dismantled it into as every little piece that I could, and sorted it all, and then reassembled a little pretend typewriter out of some of the parts. And it was my first Sweetest Little Thing submission. And my husband bought it back for me because he figured it was something I should hang on to.
So this was a similar experience where suddenly you were kind of freed up, because you didn't think of when you first started taking the typewriter apart, it really was a practical endeavor. You weren't thinking about making art out of it.
Yeah, no, it was just a project, yeah.
Yeah. But then once you started doing that, it presented, kind of similar to the monkey thing, it was like a new challenge.
Yeah.
Of how could you work with these materials to make art out of them. And because they were recycled, that also freed you up to not worry about the cost of the materials and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was garbage.
Yeah.
Twice over now. Somebody else's garbage that I'd taken apart and turned into smaller garbage.
Yeah. Before we go on, are you going to show us those little ones that you skipped over? Can I see those, or do you want to come back and talk about those?
Well, when I started, actually it was Graham Patterson's workshop, I learned how to make a little wireframe critter covered in sticky tack and dryer lint. So I made this monkey. And of course, every monkey needs a guitar, and then I made an animation with the two of them hanging out. But then I became fixated on making little miniature guitars out of like garbage stuff. And
one of which is here, right?
Yeah, that's a replica of Julie's Hagstrom.
Julie Dvaun.
Yeah. So
it's pretty nice. That was in an animation of hers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
I probably shouldn't touch that too much.
Yeah, you can. And a little switch even moves.
Oh my god. You can come play with this afterwards. So the typewriter got you thinking about materials in a different way. It kind of revealed a new way of working, but it also revealed a relationship to materials that wasn't exactly new. Can you talk about how these processes of recycling, salvaging relate to your upbringing?
Oh, well, my mom was very much in, well, her waste not, want not was like every day you would hear that, and she wouldn't throw anything out. And I later found out that my Opa, my grandfather, was a crazy hoarder. Like he had like pathways through his house and just like piles of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was raised not to throw anything out, and she used everything, and that's how I was raised. You just,
for practical reasons.
Yeah, or yeah, like even like she made all our Christmas tree ornaments out of like orange juice containers and stuff.
Right.
And, yeah.
So you'd seen it done before.
Yeah.
Just needed to see it in a different light, maybe.
I guess.
Yeah. Something clicked for you.
Yeah.
And how it would become your art. Can you, I know you've got some slides. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you use different things that you've recycled in your sculptures? If any of you have been to Tara's house and to her studio, she has a lot of things. It's like she has a little mini warehouse of collections of like things like buttons, springs, Like, if you were to go to Tara's house and ask her if she had something, she undoubtedly would, and she could go to the spot in the studio where you could find that thing. Can you talk a little bit about the different kinds of materials that you use in your sculptures?
Yeah. Well, I like to use everything, all kinds of things. I also like to make things that wiggle. So if, anything that has a spring in it is useful, like old pens that are dead. They almost all have springs in them. Lighters all have springs in them. Guitar strings are like a spring because they got coils and stuff. But even like a Kleenex box, there was these beautiful, like 10 years ago, there was these beautiful Kleenex boxes that, I mean, I don't use Kleenex, but my friend did, and she saved me the box. And it had these Gerbera daisies on them, and I thought they were just too pretty not to use, but they needed something more, like a bed spring behind them to hold them up, and a doll's eye in the center to blink. But once you start cutting up a doll, you've got to use all the parts. So I've got a jar of all the stuffing for other things, and then I have a lot of mounted baby limbs. and there was even one, I think you were at my house, and there was like this discarded thigh and knee of a doll. and I was just sort of looking at it, and I just was like, oh, just a little bit of a few lines and just a slice here and a slice there. It became the knee. So
the bunny is here, but making a personal appearance if anyone wishes to see the bunny.
It's in Leah's collection.
Yeah.
And so those two previous things I was making for a show I was putting on at the members' summer stuff at Struts in 2007, and everything was on springs, and I had another typewriter that was broken that I'd gutted, but I left the keys on it and left a lot of the mechanisms working, and made an installation where you could, as you can see, play the typewriter, and the strings went out into the gallery and down and wiggled all the little things in the room. So I called it Spring Strings and a Mechanical Thing, because that's what it was made out of. Yeah. And pretty much everything in here is just like garbagey things, found things. I was going to the Salvation Army and getting like those things that coasters go in. That came out of my backyard, that hornet's nest. That was a scary day.
You're going to explain what these
I'm
are all
going to
made out of.
explain what those little
in a
teeth
minute.
are made out of, yeah, for sure. Those teeth are, if you want to watch another video of me taking something apart, I don't smoke anymore, but I used to, and I know how many lighters a smoker will go through. So I decided to, I think I might have actually been looking for flint when I first took my first lighter apart, because I had like a, the kind of lighter you can put a flint in, and I didn't have any flint. But when I realized how many parts were inside of a lighter, well, I just had to take apart every single dead lighter I could find, and everybody I know who smokes saves me lighters now. And those little red thumb depressors, if you put two of those together, you have an awesome little set of miniature teeth. And and every single lighter has 3 springs inside of it. Well, every Bic anyway. All the lighters are made differently, and there's different ways of putting them. This one I'm just melting the spring right to the plastic. Other times I've like tied it to the wire that holds the jaw together. And I used crazy glue because I like crazy glue. Although I just got my first hot glue gun last year. So, and I haven't really used it for much, but so these are a few of the sweetest little things that I've made with those teeth.
What are all the bases?
Well, the polka dotted one is a doorknob with a cork in the top. And then the other one is, I think it was like a fancy stopper for like a bottle that I crammed a red cork into.
And when you come across material, do you like immediately see what the use is going to be, or do you just hold on to it and then you'll think? Like,
sometimes it's really apparent, and other times you just know that it's a good thing to hold on to.
And then it's just like a case of rummaging sometimes and like, finally that's what I need to finish that, or that's what I need to do that.
Yep.
I'm sort of jealous of your private warehouse, actually.
Do you know how much brain space it takes up? Don't be jealous. It's so hard to keep track of where everything is. So yeah, and another raw material is plastics. I'm a big fan of plastics because I make flowers out of them, along with guitar strings and buttons. But the plastic is the raw material. And if you saw the press release,
that was the picture of you on the press release was
me.
Tara, dumpster diver. And I asked Tara to include this because I have a soft spot for this image, because I feel like I introduced her to this dumpster. I didn't actually, my father did. And Tara came down to Maine with me one summer where my father lives, and Tara had given my father as a thank you present for us going. Thanks for doing that, by the way. Like, it was, I didn't do anything. Like, hey, Dad, here we are. Tara has a present for you, which was some of these flowers. And then Tara explained how she made the flowers and their plastic origins. And my father, who is a builder and also someone, I think he would attest, who also saves.
He's a keeper of things.
Everything.
Yes.
Tara came home with a lot of good stuff from my dad's shop. He's like, oh, here, just drawers of things. See whatever you want. But anyway, she was telling him about the flowers. He's like, oh, I can get you plastic. And he's like, let's go to the town transfer station, which is like the recycling depot. He's like, oh, there's bins full of colored plastic that people just throw. And most of them were clean.
Yeah.
So Tara...
We filled your dad's station wagon.
Yeah. And then we went back, and I introduced Tara to a bandsaw.
I had been cutting them by hand with scissors. But we processed all that plastic in like an hour on a bandsaw. It was awesome.
You were so excited.
It was so excited. We took a station wagon full of plastic and turned it into a grocery bag.
A grocery bag, yeah. Exactly.
It was pretty awesome.
So yes, thank you for including that. That was
no problem.
It was another moment.
Are we still making sense with the plan?
We are. I was going to... well, in this, you came back from this trip and made the installation with all the flowers on the typewriter that we saw, right?
Nope. That was the Garden of Earthly Detritus.
Oh, right. The Garden of Earthly Delights. You made the Garden of Earthly Delights.
Detritus.
And I mean, you're right, detritus. Do you want to talk about the buttons first?
Well, why don't we get the buttons out of the way?
Yeah, let's talk about those buttons.
Because plastic can be cut into many. This is the same plastic I used on the flowers, but Leah had to make a miniature of her childhood stuffed bear called Bozo. And she didn't know what to do for the eyes, so
because the original eyes were made out of buttons, but the real buttons would be too big. So I was like, I happened to be at Tara's. Tara really likes problem solving. You love a little challenge. So I was like, I need to make something that looks like buttons.
So then I set to work and made her some buttons, 2 different sizes, because I didn't know which size she'd want. And well, as you can see from the penny, it's a horrible photograph, but that's how big they are. And of course, she chose the small ones, and that they got sewn onto her bear. But then I was like, well, I need to spend the next 2 months making tons of buttons.
Which are also here.
Awesome. So
they're really beautiful little plastic buttons, color-coded and everything.
And I had pre-printed the sheets, and I had them all punched and ready to go. So I just was like, waiting for planes and, just sewing buttons to cards and stuff for days on end.
So that takes us to the Garden of Earthly Detritus.
Yes.
And I was wondering if, because this gets, we've already mentioned that I mean, you're making miniature sculptures, but then you're also making installations. And I wondered if you could talk about this installation, and when you get to the picture of the Rogue Cinema, I want to ask you a question specific about that. But if you just want to talk about.
Well, this installation was called The Garden of Earthly Detritus, and my plan was everything in there would be made from garbage. And the fence I made from Adriana, I got wainscoting out of Adriana's dumpster when she was cleaning out the garage at her new house, and I ripped it down and turned it into fences. So yeah, it was just the middle rim of struts, and it was just full of flowers. And this was my favorite one. It was a bunch of flowers just rammed into an old scale, and if you hit the scale, it would bounce them up and down. But yeah, the room was full of flowers, and but I also made a set of buildings so that I could screen an animation that I'd made to go with that show that was about the process of cutting up those plastic bottles. And it was a rotoscoped animation that I learned how to do rotoscoping from Paula Cowan, which was awesome. I'd never known how to do that before. So yeah, it was just like a self-portrait animation kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Where I just talked about cutting plastic up and recycling and my mom, stuff like that. And then, so yeah, inside I just had this goofy little thing screening inside this Rogue Cinema. But on the side, because Struts was still screening stuff on like bed sheets hanging off the side of the building in the summer programming, so I thought it would be fun to, and I didn't include a slide of it, but on the side of that building is a ripped up old hanky, and I have a little mini projector projecting the animation on the side of it. It's called Cutting. It's on my website if you want to see it. There's a lot of stuff that's not in here that's on my website.
The Rogue, what I wanted to ask about the Rogue Cinema was that this now gets us into your animations. So you're alongside all the sculptures that you make with found objects and found materials, you also make animations. But you frequently show them sort of in these sculptural kind of installations. You want to talk a little bit about why you do that? Versus just screening. I mean, sometimes you do screen them like on a screen, but frequently they're in.
Yeah, I think it's more, well, at least for me, it's more engaging than watching it on a screen or on a wall or on a TV. I don't know, because you're making like a whole world for it. I made, the Owens had a 3-woman show that Amanda and Paula and I were in. And for that I made the Starlight Drive-In, which was a triple feature of 3 existing animations that I'd made. But I made it into like a little drive-in, and I made a little projector housing that was a concession stand, and had Roxy rig up the projector underneath the table to point up at a mirror that I'd put in so that it would hit the drive-in screen perfectly, and it worked out really nicely.
And these are all like working, again, it's all recycled materials, right?
Yeah, well, this speaker that I made is the bottom of like a soap bottle that I just drilled holes into and cut a hole out for a button, and then put like a real speaker in it, but it was like a speaker from the Salvation Army. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's all made out of this has a trophy base with sushi green things for grass, and then yeah, just like old wire painted to look like stuff. And yeah. And the popcorn is an old Visa bill. and for this one, I actually made a lot of extra animations because it's a drive-in. I thought there should be like interstitial concession stand ads. So I've included one of the interstitials here. It's really goofy, and it doesn't display perfectly, but forgive me. It's PowerPoint. I'll blame PowerPoint.
Is it going?
I don't think so.
It's not going.
I think I did it wrong. Just a sec.
Okay. There we go.
So I made I made 3 of those interstitials with different dancing foods, and that was so much fun.
Well, that gets us into now talking about your animation.
Yes.
So you graphic design for school, and then you were working as a graphic designer, quit that job because you hated it,
Mm-hmm.
and then decided you'd try animation, though you'd never really done any animation before. So how did you use, but you learned a lot of Photoshop.
Yes.
You want to talk about how you just said, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out how to use Photoshop to animate. You want to talk about that, and then we'll look at some of your animations?
Well, while I was still, I'd gotten really good at Photoshop while I was working in advertising. And it was like the dawn of the internet. So the odd client wanted an animated GIF for their website or something. So I knew that you could animate in Photoshop. But usually you keep it under 10 frames. But when I quit my job, and I was very keen on doing some real animating, I call it real even though it's not real animating. It was around the same time Paul came to town, Paul Henderson, and they had at Struts and Fawcett had started a little honorarium to do some online work. So I figured I'd make this animation, and they let me, and they paid me. Oh, I did it wrong again. Just a sec. So this is the first animation I made, and I did it all in Photoshop. It's basically a giant animated GIF. I had to do it all at night too, because I had to count and keep track of it, and I couldn't have any distractions. But I decided I really liked animating after I did that. Definitely something I wanted to do more of.
So something good came out of that job.
Yeah.
Working for the evil ad company.
Oh, for sure.
That's one of the reasons why I asked that. Well, not about the evil ad company, but I think there's, when you look at how you work, particularly with sculpture and the recycled materials and making the venues for all your animation, that there's something about this kind of the challenge of working with a material that maybe is not what you're doing something with it that it's not meant to do, and kind of envisioning, well, what can I do with this, or how could I use this material? And I think there's something similar to about how you approached animating. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do this, but I know a lot about Photoshop. So I'm going to do this, hell or high water, I'm going to figure out how to do this in Photoshop. And I think that it's just an impulse of yours and how you make that I've always found very innovative. Like it's very practically minded, but it's also very creative in how you think of how to solve a problem with the means at hand.
Yeah.
And then you decided to keep doing that, but you got better at it, or you started thinking about you figured out better ways to use Photoshop.
Yeah.
Or to make it a more efficient process.
Yeah, I learned how to do motion graphics in an editing software, so I still use Photoshop to like prepare things and get things ready and make like little loops of things, but I do the bulk of the animating in a editing software. So the next animation is it's like a production weekend at Fawcett where we put together like envelopes of like challenges and limitations and inspirations and handed them out, and everybody grabbed an envelope and then you had to make something, and the envelope
so kind of like the blind drawing challenge.
Yeah,
but now
this is
is
another
an animating
challenge,
challenge.
and the limitations I put right at the front, that was what was in my envelope. So I think I did this. I didn't do it in 6 hours, I'll tell you that, but I think I did it in 6 days. And
6 hours, 6 days is the same thing.
Yeah, and this one has that first slide in it. I used my repeat pattern as the wallpaper for this room. Yeah, and Kaylee's door, actually, Kaylee Cook's door is in this, because before she bought that house, I was looking at that house, and I love taking photographs of houses I'm looking at. So it's just like a big collage in the editing software of the photos that I got ready in Photoshop. So I'm using motion graphics for the first time, and I like it.
How do you generate your audio?
It's a mix of me talking and
just altering your voice?
Altering my voice and making music to go with it. I think the first one, I think I downloaded the explosion for that one. Yeah. And the Dawn of the Pixies has like whale music that I was just playing backwards over a loop of a record needle.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just like audio collage as well.
Yeah.
I like audio collage. The next animation, should I skip it? It's just the Pretty Birds one. Do we still have time for that?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You can talk. Yeah,
I like to cut stamps out of erasers, and the Owens asked me to do a studio call in 2010, so I hadn't cut an eraser. I used lino tools. It's really easy to just cut up an eraser with lino tools, but I figured I should practice before I took this into the classrooms and had like 11-year-olds slicing themselves up. So I decided to cut a new set of stamps, and I made an animation for my friend Fred out of the new stamps that I'd cut. And this is it. And again, I processed the images in Photoshop, but I did all the motion graphics in an editing program, and it cuts down the time so much.
I want to make one note about what you were talking of, saying that you'd been asked to do this one thing, this project for Struts.
No, for the Owens.
I mean, for the Owens, excuse me. And so your practice attempt became artwork for something else. That's another aspect of how you work that I've always admired, that it's never a wasted moment. Like the sketch or the idea or like the practice of doing something can always be recycled and used in another way.
Yeah, waste not, want not.
Waste not, want not.
Yeah. And the reason they were chickadees is because I was also developing a drawing of a chickadee that I wanted to have as a tattoo. So I was practicing chickadee drawings, which is why I made chickadee stamps.
Good thing he wrote a song about a bird.
Yeah, I know, right? I like birds and flowers a lot. The next animation, well, it's not all animation. My next project was from 2 years ago. It was called Tantruma Revisited, and it was a 4-part imaginary history of Sackville and the surrounding area. And it screened on the small screen in little iPods that I put inside old telephones. That's what it looked like when it was at Struts. So you just go up, each one had a different animation in it. And so I'm just going to play you one of those animations because it's appropriate. That work? No, it doesn't like doing that, does it? There. I had a lot of help with this. Leanne Zagay did all of the stop motion animation. I hired her as my animator.
Since the earliest days of man, Sackville has been recognized as a world-class center for the arts. In the beginning, cave paintings depicting the concerns of the day were the primary form of expression. Today, we find ourselves building on that history, quite literally. Sackville's world-famous Owens Art Gallery is built directly above these caves, filled with ancient art. Hello there, I'm Guy Murdoch, Mayor of Sackville. Now I'm here at the Owens Art Gallery, admiring the gallery's unique collection of Monet paintings. These works were found stacked in a hayloft some years ago, and our researchers have determined that they are indeed the work of the French founder of Impressionism. Records show he traveled to Sackville aboard the world-famous French dirigible La Baleine Volante.
La Baleine Volante.
Around the turn of the century, when he fell in love with the local landscape and spent several months in Tantruma painting the marshes, the haystacks, and the famous Swan Pond. Of course, who wouldn't be inspired by such beauty? No matter the season, Sackville has long been the place to come to study, appreciate, and create arts of all kind. Alongside the artisans, painters, printmakers, sculptors, photographers, and craftspeople, there are world-famous poets, writers, filmmakers, musicians, and performers of all types who have also drawn much inspiration from this unique place. And all of them have contributed to the area's cultural countenance through their work.
Sackville is, it's a great little town. It's really, Sackville is, living and working, it's a great town. just a great little town. Yes. Oh, yes.
The father of Canadian poetry, Sir Charles G.D. Roberts, spent much of his early years in Tantramar. He would later compose countless odes to his youthful pursuits, one of which he would later put to film, becoming in the process one of Canada's first animators. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Tantramar's rich artistic history and are as confident about its future as I am. I'll leave you now with a special presentation of Charles G.D. Roberts' first animation. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy.
Bat, bat, come under my hat. Bat, bat, come under my hat, and I'll give you a slice of bacon, and when I bake, I'll give you a cake, if I am not mistaken.
Now I feel like my next question is going to be so serious. I've spent a lot of time with you when you're animating, and I know that you go through a lot of stages of editing. Like, I happen to know that this project, which is quite extensive, I mean, it just took a very long time. There was a lot of editing. We've talked about how blind drawing and working with salvaged materials allowed you to relinquish a certain measure of perfectionism, but it doesn't mean that you relinquish rigor. If a sculpture and animation isn't working, like, you just keep going until you get it right. With, I would say, an impressive doggedness and a kind of fortitude. Can you talk a little bit about your editing process, particularly with regards to animation?
Well, I like things to be pretty, but I don't know much about like story arcs and things like that, but my husband is like a film buff and always has been, and is like, well, he's just giant brain smart. And so in the beginning I would show him my work as I was going, and by the and of course he'd tell me how I needed to change things, and we would fight about that because, well, he didn't understand my process, and I understood what he wanted me to do, but I didn't think it was always possible to do it. So I'd get very frustrated, of course, and that would usually end up in a fight. But he was right, and I just had to, think about how I could solve that problem. And, now I don't show him stuff until I'm really close to the end, so he doesn't get sick of it as much. But yeah, it's just problem solving again. It's just like trying to figure out cheats, ways to get that effect without, adding 100 hours to a job. That's,
Mm-hmm. So it brings us back to, that's why I asked it brings us back to, again, that relationship to problem solving and to being introduced with a particular challenge, so that, like I was talking about how your drafts of things and sketches become work, you use, like, the editing process is also part of, it's really part of the production. It helps you solve particular problems.
yeah.
It's crucial in many ways. It's not just about, like, finishing it. It's also about a way of learning how, because you've learned through the editing process, you've figured things out that you then,
Yeah.
like techniques that you then use in later animations, right?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. Every single project seems to build on the leftovers of the last one, like what you learned and the mistakes you made and the parts that got thrown away, because you don't really want to throw away anything you animated. So,
Right.
yeah.
I know too that animating, for somebody who really loves working with their hands, like sitting at the computer for hours on end is kind of a painful process. And in the last 5 years, you've taken up quilting, which kind of seems like worlds apart from animating. And you've described it to me, it's sort of like the relief at the end of the tunnel. Do you want to talk about how you started quilting? Or so we can talk about your quilts now, and what you like about the process of quilting?
Sure. This quilt was the thing that I did as soon as I finished the Tantrum I Revisited project. I spent the next 2 months making this, and it's entirely made, well, except for the border and the back, it's entirely made of scraps that I had on hand because, well, you don't throw anything out. How I started quilting was spending time with my mom, who had her health began to decline about 5 years ago. So instead of just visiting her for the weekend, my husband sent me up to see her for like 5 weeks, and I learned how to quilt because she's kind of was very obsessed with quilting. And if you wanted to hang out with her, you're either going to quilt or watch her quilt. There was like nothing else. Or watch the Weather Channel. So, why not learn how to quilt? And this is a big quilt. This is like a queen-size bed quilt. So it's like 10 feet across. And on one of my visits down, she was in Mississippi for a while. And so she already taught me most of the things I needed to know how to quilt. So I figured I'd, invent a quilt that trip. But I didn't know what I was going to do until I went to the first night there. I went to her guild meeting, her Quilters Guild meeting. And one of the ladies in the guild just like beelined to me, opened up a tin, and in this tin was like a dozen of these amazing fabric flowers. And I was just like, how did you know? So she showed me how to make them that night, and then I just started making them, and I decided I needed to make a landscape for the background, and that was going to be my project for that trip. And of course, while I'm making the front, I don't measure or pin. I'm just like cutting up my mom's fabric, and she's just like, you're wasting a lot of fabric there. I was like, well, don't worry, I'll sew it all together. And that's the back, is all the scraps that I cut from the landscape front. And so yeah, that was, well, I didn't have quite enough to do the whole back, so I added the purple rivers, and then I ended up calling it 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, because it's a double-sided quilt made in Mississippi with a river delta on the back. But yeah, and more recently, sewing with scraps, I've been making pillows with just like some of the like tiniest pieces. Some of those are my mom's leftovers that I found, and of course the solid areas are larger pieces of fabric, but the veins of color are all made with scraps.
One of the things that I love about these pillows is that the way that Tara makes these, she did a workshop at Handmade Assembly, so I got to learn how to do this, and it's sort of random, like Tara has tons of little tiny scraps, and you just start sewing all these little pieces of scraps together, so you don't necessarily know what shapes you're going to make, so the scraps start to dictate the patterns to a certain extent. I mean, then there's cutting and stuff that's involved, but I like the fact that there's a certain element of chance to these. And the other thing about the quilting in general that I think, when I said earlier that the animation and the quilting could seem like two totally different things, and then maybe even the sculpture, it's a very disparate practice. I think what's come up this evening is that some of the things that really tie all that together is just your approach to how you make things. It almost doesn't matter if you're making quilts or you're making animations or you're making sculptures or you're doing blind drawings. It's about this relationship to material that is about kind of like salvaging things and recycling, and a relationship to problem solving. And that sometimes the problems come out of the materials themselves, like the materials will suggest a problem that you solve, or the process leads you down a different problem. So I've always been really impressed with that I don't think of your practice as disparate. I think it's connected in these kinds of ways of making. Maybe not necessarily the objects as obviously, but the ways of making. Which, however, and this leads us finally, we're wrapping up now, we got a couple more things, just a few more images to show, because you actually are now starting to think about how to combine the quilting and the animating.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, my mom had a very large collection of fabric and was very obsessed with quilting. And well, I thought that would be, an interesting topic for a documentary about her. So I had a great idea and wrote it all up in a grant and thought I should submit some support materials. So I took some portraits of her and made these little animated GIFs of her using her sewing machine and her fabric and her thread. So this is her as a very young child.
It's a sewn portrait.
This is just fabric, just laid on top of fabric, and then this one's a mixture of fabric and a sewn layer that I photoshopped on top of it. Because I thought it would be neat to do like a quilted animation. Mixing all different kinds of styles, but making sure that there's like fibers in all the frames somehow. So that's still
in the works.
Still in the works. It's a long-term project. I think I'll do it eventually, but
you will.
Yeah. For now, it's on hold.
And that's everything.
That's it.
That's pretty much it. That's all my questions for you.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, or we just want to open up to the floor for questions?
Well, yeah. If you think we should do that.
Okay.